Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to begin the meeting this morning with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excuse me. Okay, if I can have the clerk call the roll, please.
Commissioner McGee?
Here.
Commissioner Dukas?
Here.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
Here.
Commissioner Onstad?
Here.
Commissioner Westner?
Present. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're on item 4, public comments. This is a time in the calendar to hear comments from anyone in the audience who wants to speak on any item that is not on the agenda today. I have no cards, and I see nobody raising their hand, so we'll move on to item 5, PL 13-0039. Staff, please. I'm sorry I cut you short.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. I'm Becky Linder, and I'm here to present the staff report for conditional use permit case number PL 13-0039, Apricot Lane Farms. Before I begin, there was an errata sheet handed out to you, and there are two revised conditions. One for the traffic impact mitigation fee, and the change was that the ADT went from 123 ADT to 17 ADT, primarily due to the project description changed during the process, and they eliminated their request to hold weddings out there. And so that changed their traffic impact mitigation fee. And then the second change is to the last condition on Exhibit 6 of your staff report, conditions of approval, page 21, and that is the Agricultural Commissioner's condition for notification to neighbors for special events and ag promotional uses and temporary outdoor events, that the neighbors will be notified of the events if they're zoned for ag and they're located within 300 feet of the event instead of 300 feet from the parcel lines. So that includes the farm tour road and the to notification, so it kind of changes the notification distance slightly. So those are the two changes.
Excuse me, Becky, before you begin, I have a question.
Yes.
How many properties are within 300 feet of the subject properry?
The parcel lines.
How many neighbor parcels would ordinarily be notified?
I have that in my file.
Okay.
I can let you know
maybe later
when
on
I go back up there.
Sure, maybe later on you can share that information.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I also printed out, and we can use it as a exhibit. I had a radius map done. There's a radius map that's done for the notification of properties located within 300 feet of the project parcels. And then I also had a map prepared that shows the 300 feet from the events. So you can see it's
Yeah.
almost the same, but not quite, a few less. So if you want to see that map, I can.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. There we go. The proposed project is located at 10700 Broadway Road at the southwest corner of Broadway and Stockton Roads in the county unincorporated area near Moore Park. The vicinity map shows the project parcels, which are located at the intersection of Broadway and Stockton Roads. The general plan designations for the project area is open space and agriculture. And the zoning designation is AE 40 acres, which is agriculture exclusive, 40-acre lot size minimum. The surrounding land uses are primarily agriculture and some open space. And then there is an adjacent property to the northwest, right up here in this court. Oh, it's not showing. There we go. Right in that corner. It goes off the map. Okay. Which is used as an equestrian facility. The applicant requests that a discretionary permit be granted to authorize 2 conditional use permits for the operation of agricultural promotional uses and temporary outdoor events for a period of 10 years. The Planning Commission is the decision maker for the requested CUP for agricultural promotional uses, and the Planning Director is the decision maker for the requested CUP for the temporary outdoor events. However, the Planning Director has deferred her decision on this matter to your commission to combine the 2 related permits together at one public hearing. Agricultural promotional uses include farm tours with catered lunches and farm technology seminars and classes. These will be held weekdays, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., with a maximum of 3 times per week each. The temporary outdoor events include catered to farm table dinners, charity events, movie nights, fundraisers, and farm-themed festivals. And the maximum number of events will not exceed 60 events per year combined. This chart summarizes and describes the 60 events that will be held per year at the project site. And as an option, the applicant has requested that up to 39 dinners per year for the farm-to-table dinners, the fourth one down, of 50 attendees, maximum of 50 attendees, if there are less than 5 movie nights held in the year. So either way, there will be a maximum total of 60 events per year and no more. This project site plan shows the temporary events fence area, which the temporary events area is right in the center in here, and there will be some held up at the top up here by the stables. But down here, you've got the temporary events area, food vendor staging areas 1 and 2. A little lower down, there's a picnic area And a little further down in here is and I'll show pictures of those areas, is a demonstration garden area. And then this big square down here is the main parking area. And this will be for bus parking as well. It is considered the main parking area. And up here in this main event area is the primary residence and a secondary house. And in those areas, you'll see pictures, is where they're going to have the food vendor area, staging areas. And up here in the top part of the parcel, where they have their barn and their pond, is also a caretaker dwelling, and that will have the third food staging area. And I'll show you pictures of it so you can see it better. And then the yellow outline all along in here is the Farm Tours Road. And the main entrance comes in here off of Broadway, and the cars will travel down this road, which is called Maria Drive, and they will park in here. And then they will either walk, there's a walking path, this purple line, up to the main events area. And then if they're taking a farm tour, and the applicant can explain it maybe in additional detail, they'll be taken around the farm on these farm roads and being shown the demonstration farm areas and orchards. This is a picture of the main house and a caretaker dwelling, and these structures themselves inside will not be used for any of the events or tours. This is the event area by the main house that you just saw. This is a picture of a portion of the access road leading to the temporary events area. This will be the food vending area number 1, shown on the site map. This is another picture of the food vending area, just looking up closer at it. This is food vending area number 2, picnic area. And this is another picture looking back further at it, and that, I believe, is the part of the demonstration garden. Is that what? Yes? Okay. It's grown in the last year. Looks a little different. And this is food vending area number 3, which was up higher in the property where the barn and stable area is, and this is the caretaker dwelling, and they'll use the outside of that. And this is also the food vendor area number 3, patio. They're going to use the patio portion. This is the demonstration garden, which is part of ag promotional uses. This was taken a year or so ago, so it looks a little different now. I guess it was just planted. This is looking west. This is an open field, the open field that will be used as the primary parking area for temporary events and the ag promotional uses. And this is the parking lot looking east, and that's just a hen house. I guess it moves around, can be put anywhere. This is looking west from that main parking area, and it shows a portion of the existing access roads on the site that lead to the temporary events area, the orchards, and the ag promotional use areas. This is another portion of the existing orchard road, which will be used for farm tours. And again, looking east, this slide shows at the time a newly planted demonstration orchard, which is part of the farm tours and area and located within the CUP boundary. Whoop. Let me go back. Okay, sorry. This area is the vermiculture area, a building where they have worm growing, which will be part of ag promotional uses, and it's a 3-stage process, I believe. And this is the outdoor worm bin area. It's right adjacent to that building that you just saw where the worms are grown. This is all part of ag promotional uses. These tanks are filled with organic fertilizer made from worm casings blended with water to make what they call a fertilizer tea. And this is also part of the ag promotional area, and the applicant can give more details on that process. This is a picture of a new orchard. I believe it's a biodynamic orchard, and I'll let her explain that in more detail. Vermiculture area is up here in the upper left corner. Those are the pictures that I just showed you with the worms. And this is looking east from the demonstration orchard. Just shows one of the nearest neighbors' houses on the east side. Here's the barn building, which has offices, classrooms, and stables. This is the courtyard of the barn building inside, and will be used for classes and ag promotion. This is their irrigation pond, which is right behind or in front of the barn building. A mitigated negative declaration was prepared, and a mitigation measure was required by the Agricultural Commissioner's Office regarding providing written notification of temporary events and agricultural promotional uses to neighbors with agriculturally zoned properties located within 300 feet of the temporary event taking place. An errata sheet was handed out at the beginning of my presentation. I discussed that. So that includes the revision to the mitigation condition. During the public review period, a couple of neighbors commented on the MND. They had concerns about traffic and noise from the proposed project, and response to comments were prepared and are attached to the MND. The applicant has had several meetings with their neighbors and has modified the project to its current description to address their neighbors' concerns. The proposed project is found to be compatible with adjacent land uses. It is consistent with the general plan policies, and it conforms with the non-coastal zoning ordinance requirements. Traffic and noise studies were done, and impacts were found to be less than significant. Compatibility with agriculture was evaluated and found to be compatible with implementation of the mitigation condition for notification of events to neighbors. Therefore, all required findings can be made. And you can see the staff report section E for more details. Staff recommended actions are shown on these slides and can be found in section G of your staff report. I won't torture you by reading them, but just to summarize, the Planning Division recommends that your commission certify your review and consideration of this item, find that based on the whole record, that the project with the implementation of mitigation measure will not have a significant effect on the environment, adopt the MND, make the required findings to grant the CUPs, grant the CUPs subject to the conditions of approval and the mitigation monitoring program, and specify that the Planning Division is the custodian of the record. This concludes my presentation. The applicant, Molly and John Chester, and their representatives, Lisa Woodburn from Jensen Design and Survey, are present today to answer questions your commission may have. Are there any questions of staff?
Questions? Not at the present time, Becky. Thank you. Okay, at this,
I think I'm going to go sit
yeah,
down.
I'm sure we'll have a couple of questions later.
Okay. Do you mind if I go sit down?
Yeah, go ahead and have a seat. At this time, it's appropriate for disclosures. Commissioner
No disclosures.
Commissioner Dukas.
I took a drive out to the site yesterday, and I didn't get a chance to go around the property. I just went to the gate to clarify in my mind some issues regarding traffic and the turns that one has to make in order to access the property. So that's it.
Commissioner Onstock.
I have no disclosures.
Commissioner Western.
The only disclosure I have is being a resident of Moore Park for 34 years. I'm familiar with the area and the property, but I did not visit it.
My disclosure would be that I'm familiar with the area, having worked in the area 40 years ago. It's been a long time since I've driven on the Stockton Broadway intersection area. Excuse me. So I'm a little fuzzy on my total recollection. I do go up and down Grimes Canyon periodically off 118 to get to the golf course there. But I haven't gone beyond that in recent years. That's it. Excuse me. Okay, I have speaker cards for the applicant, Lisa Woodburn.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Woodburn. I'm the planning manager at Jensen Design and Survey. We're located at 1672 Donlin Street in Ventura. And I'm here today representing, representing John and Molly Chester. They're the operators at Apricot Lane Farms. The Chesters are applying for these CUPs for two main reasons. One is to market the Apricot Lane Farms brand, and the other is to educate the public about the benefits of biodynamic and organic farming. To better explain the concept of biodynamic farming, we have a short video that we would like to play at this time.
Did you make it? We have available?
Yeah, it's up at the...
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is John Chester. My wife, Molly, and I, along with our dog, Todd, run Apricot Lane Farms, located in Southern California. This farm is not only organic, but it's also biodynamic. This self-contained environment that we're creating here is our sacred space. We focus on harnessing the solutions that we feel already exist in nature. Everything on this farm has a symbiotic relationship and this multi-dimensional purpose, and that's what we're searching for. The ducks eat the evil snails, the sheep mow the orchard grass, the chickens keep the pasture clean, and the horses pull around trailers and chicken houses. And all of these animals fertilize the land. I think it's a simple way of farming, but it's just not easy. Farming's new for us.
Hello, chickens.
I mean, we're barely 2 years in.
Oh, not yet.
You pull him out.
It's forced me to become very comfortable with really knowing what it means to embrace failure.
Oh, God. Oh, well.
Because for us, failure has the answers we need. You have to trust that the magic is going to happen when your heart's desire is in sync with your conscience. Never in a million years would I have ever been able to predict that simply watching animals eat grass would make my chest feel like it was going to explode. Farming is teaching me just how incredibly intelligent nature is. That alone is comforting. Our job is to be patient, be observant, and at the right time provide the natural raw ingredients that she needs. And then just step back. I love that we're sharing this land with the next generation, watching them be inspired by its magic. And it's in those moments that I begin to realize how lucky we are to be here, essentially managing an ecosystem. If you knew how your food was grown or raised, and given the choice, what would you eat? And I think that's the question that this generation is going to have to answer. Wendell Berry once said that under the pavement, the dirt is dreaming of grass.
As Becky mentioned, we're requesting 2 conditional use permits. One is to allow us to promote the agricultural aspects of the farm by offering tours and educating the public about biodynamic and organic farming through classes and seminars. The tours will follow the route that Becky had shown on the site plan map. All of the roads, all of the tour route is within the CUP boundary. The classes and seminars will take place in various places around the farm, depending on the topic of the class or seminar. I do want to correct something Becky said. There are no classrooms in the barn. There won't really, the only idea of anything at the barn area would be some type of animal husbandry discussions. And then also by the pond, there could be some demonstrations on native vegetation that occurs around the pond. And then also the meals that would be offered with those tours and classes. That vending area number 3 that's up by the stables, it's actually on the east side of the stable area. The stable itself, when it was constructed, the stable part of the building is on the west side, and there's an attached, not really adjacent, it's attached to the stables caretaker unit. And that is where that food staging area is. It's not closest to the neighbor to the west. It's really on the east of the stable, between the stable and that pond. So I just want to clarify that because I know the neighbors are concerned about impacts to their property. The other CUP that we are requesting is for temporary outdoor events to promote and market Apricot Lane Farms. And I wanted to put this goal up on the slide today because I think this goal is often forgotten in the county. One of the goals of the county general plan is to encourage the continuation and development of facilities and programs that enhance the marketing of county-grown agricultural products. The farm-to-table dinners, the fundraisers, and the charity events will all be venues to market the Apricot Lane Farms brand. Even though the catered meals will be prepared off-site, they will consist of food grown at Apricot Lane Farms. We envision the farm-themed festivals as kind of a cross between ag promotional events and the outdoor event themes. These festivals are really kind of like an open house. It will give the public an opportunity to come to the farm and get a better understanding about biodynamic farming and to learn about the farming practices. And I do want to comment a little bit on what Becky said also. This application and the project description you see before you today, that was not what was originally submitted to Planning Department in February of 2013. That was an application for ag promotional ag promotional uses, which are the tours and the classes. But then we had the standard, 60 outdoor events a year with up to 200 people, and it was pretty standard what you see before you many times. That project went before the county APAC in May of 2013. And one of the neighboring property owners attended that meeting, and she made it very clear that the neighbors would not be supportive of the project as it was represented that day. So the Chesters held some meetings. They asked the neighbors to come to their property because they wanted to hear what the neighbors' concerns were, and they wanted to better explain what they had in mind of doing out at the property. And at that initial meeting, I was there. I was there. There were about 35 to 40 people that came, and began the discussion and the negotiations. And over a period of about 4 months, Mr. Chester and one of the neighbors' representatives met and talked about what the community, what the neighborhood would be comfortable with, while also allowing them to do what they felt they needed to do. And that project description is what you have before you today. So that's why there's not a room full of concerned, angry neighbors here today. It's because the Chesters did have a lot of meetings with their neighbors beforehand, many meetings over many months, and I think they came up with a project that can satisfy the goal of education and brand promoting, while at the same time acknowledging their neighbors' rights to enjoy their properties. We support staff's recommended actions, and we ask that you approve the CUPs as conditioned with the errata sheet. And the Chesters are here today to answer any questions you have specifically about the classes or the seminars or the tours, biodynamic farming in general. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the speaker?
Yes, I do.
Commissioner Maggie.
I noticed in the modification, you said there was no weddings. Was that a request from the neighbors, or how did that evolve to that point? We were not.
Yeah, that was pretty well explained. The neighbors really didn't want weddings. They didn't want the noise factor from weddings, the amplified music, the dancing, but that's associated, the noise and things that's generally associated with weddings. So we are planning to still have some music with these, the dinners, the catered events, but it'll be background dinner type of music, acoustical, CD played, music and that kind of thing. No DJs, nothing like that.
From the staff report, I couldn't quite tell what was actually on the proposed parking area, but the photo up there cleared that up for me. When people park there, what are they going to be parking on? Just the field as it is?
Dirt, right? Just gravel.
There's gravel going on.
Okay. Was there issues regarding runoff? There'll be engine oil all over the place and that kind of thing. Is there a plan for that?
Well, the project did go to the county watershed protection district and the surface runoff people, and there were no comments from them.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
For Western.
Ms. Woodburn, first of all, standard question I always ask. Does the applicant accept the conditions as presented, particularly with the errata that we received today?
Yes.
Okay, number two is, since we have two CUPs, does the applicant see them as codependent? My concern is we agree with one and not with the other. Would you like to think about it? I'm not trying to put you on the spot here.
Yeah,
We'll give the applicant a moment, a little bit later, to come up and...
I'm not saying that I'm going to do that, but since we have two, there may be findings that support one and not the other as we
Right.
go through the process. Just think about that.
Okay.
Okay. Not that I'm saying I'm going to do it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Armstrong?
Yes, I have some questions. Could you tell me what a catered high-end dinner is?
well, it would be something like, let's say we're at with Jensen. Let's say we wanted to have a corporate off-site dinner and kind of a company meeting where we get together and we talk about our goals for the future or something like that. So we would maybe contact Apricot Lane Farms and say, we'd really like to have our dinner, our corporate meeting at your facility. And that's something like that. Or it could be, they had charity events or fundraisers, things like that, that would be...
Can you give me an example of a charity event?
Yeah. Do you want to... I'm going to have John come
Maybe
on
we can
up.
have Mr. Chester step
Yeah.
up. If you would introduce yourself, give us your address again for the record, please.
Hi, my name is John Chester. The address is 10700 Broadway Road.
John, what I want is an explanation of these temporary outdoor events.
Sure.
What they are, who would attend, et cetera.
Well, I think we see that dinners as really an extension of how we are able to include the public in what we do in our process, but the idea of utilizing the food from the farm, they would be made open to, when we say high-end, we just mean that they probably will be more expensive than, a $10 meal. So we see that as a way to really mitigate any other issues with just it being open to just anyone who wants to come to a cheap meal on a farm. We really see it as people that really have an interest in this kind of sustainable farming. The charity events that I would see, when I was event, I don't know what the size request was just off the top of my head, but I see them more having to do with something related to agriculture. I don't know that we're limited by that, but that was the intent.
One of the questions I had,
Sure.
it appears to me that the temporary outdoor events are not tied to ag at all. But I understand where you could use in that, but I don't think there's any conditions imposing a requirement that they be ag-related. Isn't that correct?
No, I think you might be correct with that. Yeah.
Okay. What concerns me, and I'll just tell you right now, and we'll follow all the way through in the questions I have, is over the years I've seen lots of people come before us and ask for what amounts to a commercial development in an agricultural zone clothed in ag. And I want to understand the commercial component of this to understand the compatibility with ag. So I'm asking you questions about movie nights, fundraisers, farm theme events to find out what they are, and is this in fact a commercial enterprise as opposed to an agricultural related enterprise?
Yeah, I think I understand. Our goal really here is to have obviously flexibility, but our personal interest is in the type of agriculture that we're taking part in, and it involves a tremendous amount of it's necessary to educate the public in terms of what we're doing and why it's different. It's hard to understand the difference between the egg that we sell and the egg that is sold by Vaughn's for $3. But to get out there and experience that, our idea of having dinners on the farm would be a way to sort of invite people out. They get to see the way the food is grown and experience a meal cooked all with the food that we grow there. That's our intent. How that's interpreted by the commissioners, I understand, is maybe left a bit ambiguous, but that is our intent behind these dinners. We're not interested in doing weddings. We put that on there because we're like, oh, well, we can maybe do weddings too. And then after living there a while, we're like, you know what? We don't want to hear weddings. And we heard from the neighbors that that would be a problem, that there was a history of problems. And we're like, you know what, that's really not our business. And Tom Crocker even said to me, you'll thank me one day for this. And I get it after living there for 3 years. Because really what we came out to do was to farm. Does that answer your question anymore?
Well, yes and no. I'm assuming these events you're having are not revenue neutral, that you're going to make money.
Well,
Or you
I
wouldn't
do
do
hope
it.
we're able to sustain ourselves. Yeah, absolutely.
Could you explain to me what a movie night is?
So there's certain, that specific request was for movies that would be, in our minds, agriculturally related, but I don't know that we can say that they are or not in terms of the request.
My
But
understanding of the documentation doesn't limit you.
doesn't what?
Doesn't limit you to ag-related movies.
Okay, right. So we could show Star Wars or something like that.
I would assume so.
Yeah, right. Well, that would not be really our intent, but I mean, having the freedom would be great. But I will say that what I would hate to lose for this farm is the ability to do things that were supportive of the type of farming that we're doing.
How would this movie night take place? Well, how would it be broadcast to the audience?
So we would set up an inflated screen on the back side of the main house, which is in the very center part of the property. It's approximately, 200 yards from the parking area. People would come in, they watch the film, and they'd be escorted off the property.
Okay. Now, these are all catered events, I understand. The food, so
All catered? I don't know that they're all catered. Right?
Well, if food is prepared and offered, it will be catered
Okay.
prepared off-site.
Okay. And that's, generally speaking, was that exclusively things grown or raised on your ranch, or combination?
As much as possible, that is the goal, because we grow so many different types of things, but that would be the goal, yeah. Are you familiar with farm-to-table dinners?
Yes, sir.
Where they have these events on?
I'm a farmer.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if you were familiar with there's a traveling farm-to-table dinner operation.
Were you able to arrive at 100% consensus with your neighbors?
No, apparently.
Okay. All right.
But 99.
All right. Just a moment. I have some other issues, but I'll come back later.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for me?
Yeah, Stan.
Commissioner Dukas, yes.
I'll tell you right now, I've got a problem with the movie nights ending at 11:30. We've had other issues where weddings take place in ag. I'm sure you've read the papers.
Absolutely.
And it causes different issues. One of which being traffic and expecting quiet and having a lot of cars
Sure.
leaving. It's a very quiet area. There are two extremely I want to choose my word carefully. Tricky left-hand turns that you have to make in order to get to the property if I'm coming from the south. I have to turn left, and I noticed that the pocket to turn left doesn't accommodate anywhere near the number of cars that you'd need for your guests. So will there be buses that will access the farm? Will you have some kind of remote thing, or have you thought about how the cars are going to queue and make those two turns at Broadway?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, we have thought about it. The thing is to never have people stopping as they turn there. So we would have someone standing at that gate to make sure that no one stops to try to figure out where they're supposed to go next, that they're actually sent into the bottom Maria Drive road so that there's never a queue at that gate. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, and back up.
Back up.
Back up from the gate, turning on to. I came up the Walnut Creek and turned left on Broadway. There's a turn, and then from Broadway, in order to continue the main part of the road curves to the right, and I have to cross that traffic. Do you know where I'm talking about?
It's not.
It's the
So
main entrance.
those are the two intersections that concern me greatly with
Excuse
the...
me, could we put that up? Because I don't know where you're talking about. I'd like to see it. The map?
Can we get the map?
Yeah.
The map
Or the
of how to
vicinity.
access this area?
The vicinity map maybe would be helpful.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Gee, the tricky one.
Okay. This one? Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm coming up Grimes Canyon and I turn left at Broadway, most of the traffic turns up to the right, and to continue on Broadway, I face cars coming the other way. That's where most of the cars flow. Not only that, but to continue to the farm, you can see again that most of the traffic goes the other way, and I have to, cross traffic to get to you. This is coming from the south, so traveling north. Do you know which two intersections I'm talking about?
I see the Grimes Canyon intersection with Broadway.
Maybe I should direct this to the planner. There are two areas where there isn't a deep enough pocket to have cars queue in the number that we're talking about, 300. Is that for the whole day, or is that for something that's going to happen all at once? I'm trying to imagine how on earth these roads are going to accommodate the number of cars.
In the conditions of approval, the Transportation Department has a condition, which is condition 29 for special events. And G of 29 requires a non-uniform traffic control officer to be stationed at the entrance and exit driveway to these special events to direct traffic in and out of the parcel. And that's one thing that's going to happen. And
Okay, so those two other intersections that I'm talking about aren't controlled.
Which other intersection? I'm sorry.
If I'm coming up from Grimes Canyon Road and I turn left onto Broadway, there's a turn there, and then there's also a turn to continue
Into the property.
into the property.
Okay, I see what you're saying. No, I don't think that they're required to have an officer there at that intersection. So,
Okay. And could I just ask you, sir, how long have you been farming?
Well, I've been farming since I was a young man. I'm from Maryland, and I
Okay.
grew up on family farms.
And what do you raise? What do you raise here at your California facility?
Lemon, avocado, and about 74 varieties of stone fruit, and about 4 or 5 different types of livestock: cows, sheep, chickens, pigs.
And you're attempting to grow your brand. Apricot Farms eggs, Apricot Farms, whatever it is that you're growing.
Correct.
Okay. And to do that, you're going to have these catered events that will feature food that you've grown but are prepared off-site.
Yes.
Okay. The problem I have is with the movie nights and really the length of the permit. I'm wondering if you could think about maybe having a review time where it comes back to the Planning Commission to see how it's gone over, a period of time, say a year. and have further review? Is that something that has been thought about before?
Before I answer that, one thing is that, just to note for the record, not all of these events involve 300 people.
I've got
Yeah.
the chart. I've
Yeah,
got
we've-
the chart right here that shows me. I'm looking at the worst case scenario.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
The
Yes.
festivals, which are like open houses.
Yeah, sure. So to answer your question,
Well,
Maybe you want to think about it. Maybe you want to take some time to just think about it as
Okay.
we go on.
I mean, I do want to mention that there is the whole compliance. You know, that if people
know.
have complaints, and they bring them out. And also, I know the county's getting better about having a periodic compliance person come out and make sure that you're compliant with your conditions and checking on, the operation and making sure that you're doing what you were conditioned to do, approved to do.
Chair Rodriguez, Commissioner Dukas, may I chime in here?
Yes, please.
I'm the manager of the Condition Compliance Program in the Planning Division, and so I'm probably better able to speak to this issue. We do have the ability to go out and respond to complaints that come in regarding anything, noise or any other issue, traffic issues related to special events. We're a little more proactive now with those, where we have been doing weekend compliance reviews during the events. So we've been going out, and if this project were approved, they would be put on the list as well for us to go out with an unannounced visit to ensure that they're meeting all of their conditions of approval. But you also have a condition in your attached to your staff report that talks about if complaints were to come in, the planning director has the ability to recommend that the permit be modified or revoked, and she would bring it back to you at that time. So we're doing, as far as the planning division is concerned, we're doing the best we can to try and resolve complaints and issues as they arise, but we also have the ability to bring it back to you at any time. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you.
Richard, I have a follow-up.
Commissioner Onstott.
I want to follow up again. The staff report indicated that traffic really wasn't an issue, and yet there were required encroachment permit and traffic fees. I don't understand, if it's not an issue, how come there is an encroachment permit, and why were impact fees required?
Impact fees are standard conditioning from the Transportation Department, and that has to do with the traffic that's associated with the project.
They charge a fee, and it doesn't have anything to do with the impact?
It's to mitigate the impacts, future impacts, to pay for road improvements and things like that in the future.
So it's not project-specific, it goes into
To a fund.
a fund?
Yes.
And an encroachment permit seems specific?
Yeah, good question. Let me look at the encroachment
That's fine,
permit.
ma'am.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair?
I do want to mention something, Commissioner Onstott. I did read the encroachment permit condition, and it does require us to go to the Transportation Department and get an encroachment permit for these, when we're going to have events and tours and things. We need to, when we're going to have people coming out, parking, and impacting that intersection, we need to get an encroachment permit.
Well, I understand what you're saying. It just seemed that requiring an encroachment permit and staff saying there's no significant impact, it didn't work for me.
Okay.
Just a second, ma'am. Could we go to the notice provision that supposedly is going to solve all the conflicts with agriculture? Could we put the aerial up of the project site?
Is this the aerial that you wanted?
I beg your pardon? Yes.
Is this the aerial you wanted?
Okay. Now, it's my understanding that as modified, the notification to neighbors go to people within 300 feet of the situs of the event. I was wondering, looking at that and having things pointed out to us regarding the location of the events, there would appear to be areas where no notice is required. Am I wrong?
Well, for the tours, there
any
will
of
be.
it.
No, for some of the events, for the dinners, you're right. The Apricot Lane Farms owns
It's less than
the property that's within 300 feet of, if they're having an event right at the main house. But for tours, and if they're planning to have an event out by, let's say, the pond that's up in the northwest corner, then they would have to notify their neighbors to the west. There's two neighbors. One of them is here today. And then there's also Bill Miller over to the west. And then the neighbor to the north there, where you see like the greenhouses, the hoop houses, that's also a neighbor that would need to be notified, where those, the gray hoop houses are shown to the north.
Well, one of the problems I have being a farmer is I wonder how someone notifying me that an event's going to take place within 300 feet of my property solves the conflicts that were raised perhaps by the person who generated the letter, and maybe that's the person that's here today, solves conflicts with agriculture.
Well,
They put you on notice an event's going to take place, but I don't understand how it resolves conflicts with ag.
In conversations that I had with Corinne Bell of the Ag Commissioner's Office, their main concern had to do with the agricultural spraying that occurs and making sure that, especially with tours of children, that you're not going to have spraying occurring in the same day that you have a busload of kids coming out to do a tour.
But what you're telling me is someone has to modify their agricultural operation or not?
Well, what we put in there is, you'll see in the condition, one of the things that's written in there is that the Chesters need to notify the neighbor, but then also they need to work with them if they have a scheduled, because Corinne explained to me, she said, there's times in the year where those spraying, it's very busy, and they have the helicopters and they have to come out at a certain time. And so if the neighbor gets this notice saying that they want to have an event or a tour held at the same time or day that they're going to have spraying, they need to work that out. And it's written in the condition that way.
Well, it's not just physical spraying. Some of those pesticides and other sprays have a time life that you're not supposed to go near or in, and can last for a week. And so I just have a great deal of difficulty understanding how this notice solves problems. I don't think it does. That's all.
Commissioner Maggie.
My understanding when I read the staff report is the 300 is for these events where people are going to be coming and going. Is that correct? The 300?
The notification?
No. I'm different subject.
Okay.
Going back to the subject we talked to a little while ago, the issue was, the concern about all the traffic and so forth, and 300 participants in some event.
Oh, I'm sorry, at the event.
The event
right.
that, when I read it, it said these events where people are coming and leaving all day, so is that the case?
Yes, the 300-person events, those would be the festivals. And so those would be like an open house where you would have, a time in the day. If people are just, let's say they're curious about this type of farming, they can't make a tour, so they say, you know what, I'd like to come out that Saturday afternoon, and it's open. It'd be open from...
It's an all-day deal, isn't it?
It's an all-day, right.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we were all clear about that. Thank you.
I've got some questions, I guess. Might as well ask them now. Mr. Chester, you say you've been there for 3 years now?
A little over 3 years now, yes, sir.
And you're the applicant. However, you're not the property owner.
Correct.
And that raises an issue in my mind, and it has to do with the CUP and the length of the CUP. For many of the same reasons Commissioner Onstadt voiced. The CUP has kind of an open-ended as submitted as relates to temporary outdoor events, but it did specifically say, or you are saying, you will not have weddings there.
Correct.
However, and I don't know and don't intend to pry into the ownership arrangements, however, if that property changes hands in a couple of years, a new property owner comes in with the CUP and proceeds beyond what's agreed upon here. I'm just concerned about that, and that's why I have a question or a problem with a CUP 10 years out. I feel much more comfortable if we're going to issue one that a 5-year be an appropriate time for renewal. It can certainly be reviewed before that, and that's just my personal thoughts as I sit here and I've read the report. The other thing I have a problem with, concern with, and Commissioner Dukas has voiced it, Commissioner Onstott's voiced it, and that is the issue of the roads and the traffic. I used to work as a patrol officer for the Sheriff's Department years ago, and I had spent a certain amount of time in that area. As I said, it's been probably 40 years since I was there, and I've been on Grimes Canyon more recently whenever I might go to the golf course there in Moore Park. Saying that, and by the way, I just recall, in addition to other disclosure, I did look at Google Earth last night to get a better overview of this site visually. Anyway, I'm familiar with Grimes Canyon. I'm familiar with Balcom Canyon. Grimes Canyon is not exactly a major road, although it's a thoroughfare between 118 and 23. It provides access to a lot of people in that corridor. And I'm familiar with that road. There aren't shoulders in many of the places where you can pull off. There have been accidents there where people have gone off the road. Usually it's a truck or something that has a problem. But you're familiar with the road, so you know what I'm talking about. The access to your site is off of Broadway at Stockton, and I'm not familiar with the entrance, and I didn't see a slide that showed the entrance to the site. In relation to the intersection of Broadway and Stockton, how far removed from that intersection is your entry gate, east or west?
How far off the road is it?
How far from the intersection of Stockton and Broadway, if I'm traveling at that point on Broadway west towards your property, do I pass Stockton on my right to get to your property, or do I turn before I get to Stockton?
You turn left just before, I guess, it turns into Stockton at that corner.
Okay. And I saw the sign on the slide or the presentation, Apricot Farms. Didn't really see, again, the entrance to it. But there's also a question, and I think we have a speaker, speaker card that'll speak to it also, but I have a question, a concern about the roads and the secondary roads and access into your property by vehicles or possibly buses. I think I heard something about if there's a group comes in, they would come in off of Broadway onto, do they get onto Maria at all?
Yeah, it would be on
when they come off of Broadway?
Yeah.
Okay.
Onto Maria, correct.
Okay. Which leads to my other question, or my other concern is because you can also access Maria off of Grimes Canyon.
Correct.
And I'm familiar with part of that, not all of that, and it's no better than Grimes as far as width and shoulders. It's a farm, it's a country road. And so my concern is, as people come in out of the area with directions on how to get there, they hit their GPS, and their GPS doesn't take them through Walnut Canyon necessarily, as Commissioner Dukas came in the other day. But it might bring them up Grimes, and it'll direct them onto Maria or onto that street off of Grimes that V's into Maria, and brings them in the back way, because the GPS says they can get to it that quicker that way, as opposed to continuing on to Grimes to Broadway and then turning left toward your venue.
Sure.
You understand what I'm saying?
I do understand, sure.
And so I've got concerns about that.
Well,
and
I
don't
agree.
know I don't know how we prevent that.
Well, one of the things we would make an effort to make sure that in anything that we would post about an event on the farm to emphasize the importance of coming in the correct entrance route. I've also spoken with neighbors on the bottom half of Grimes Canyon about the possibility of putting in a sign down there that just says that this is not an entrance for Apricot Lane Farms at the base of that Grimes Canyon road. But I think those are the two ideas that we had thus far.
The other thing, thank you. The other thing I had a question about or concern about as my other commissioners spoke to, was the issue of noise and sound application. And I noticed that on your chart here, I think it's page 4 of 18 of the staff report, talks about the starting and ending times, and 10:30 being the ending time for catered events, CFTTDs, and movie nights. And movie nights actually going to 11:30. I have a problem with that in that it creates a disturbance for neighbors. And I realize you've spoken to neighbors, and you've gotten, obviously, some degree of consensus. But sound carries. You've got orchards, but you've got rolling hill-type knoll situations,
Sure.
almost canyon situations. You're familiar with it.
Sure.
And people have an expectation of privacy, of quiet, if you will.
Sure.
Legally 7, nothing should be going on before 7 in the morning in most places, and 10 o'clock at night. I mean, it's quiet time after 10 o'clock in theory. And that's when you get calls for service, for public safety response, and that type of stuff. So the fact that you have amplification in this particular case on your catered farm-to-table dinners and, catered farm dinners to 10:30
Well, let's
is a
be
problem
clear.
for me.
Yeah, I understand that, and let's be clear. That's ambient music. That's not like broadcasted like a concert or anything like that.
I understand that, but your chart here talks about amplified music. It says amplified music.
Only for the festivals, and those would be over by dusk. No amplified music for...
That's not what it says.
Oh,
here.
you know what? I'm sorry. That's not correct there. Where
The
it
only
says-
thing not amplified is movie nights, it says, which I thought,
Yeah,
that would
everything
have
else-
to be amplified.
Everything else here shows to be amplified.
Well, maybe amplified in terms of like a CD player with like as a background music. No disc jockey, no dancing. I mean, we can take that off and say acoustical. I guess we just didn't want to be limited to only live music.
No, I understand the issue of flexibility, and quite honestly, live music can become more of a problem because then you have amplifiers and speakers. And we already speak to the sound decibel issue in the report here. It appears to address it, and you, as the applicant, have accepted that. My concern is the hours of operation going beyond 10 o'clock at night.
For the movies, correct?
Or any
The other
sound,
one says
any sound,
10:30. We can make it to 10, right?
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
speaker sound.
And we don't have a problem with changing that to 10 o'clock. If that's...
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's the only questions I have for you now. You'll get the opportunity after the last speakers to do a rebuttal and respond to any of the other questions or concerns we might have.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Rodriguez, may I chime in on just
Yeah, please.
one issue you brought up, and that was regarding the conditional use permit and what would be allowed if, say, this permittee were to move on and another permittee were to take up the CUP?
Yes.
And whether they would be allowed then to integrate new things such as weddings. They have a very detailed project description that's part of this CUP, and so for their CUP, this is what they would be allowed to do unless they came in for a modification. And a modification would then require, another public hearing and another discretionary permit process to add anything or change what they've got here. So it's sort of set here as to what they'd be allowed to do.
Does that include a change in ownership or a change in the, a change in the ownership of the property?
What do you mean? I'm sorry. If
The owner of the property is remote, and if he sold it, but the Chesters continued their operation, would they need to have a modification of their CUP if the ownership changed?
No, they would not, but they would need to inform the planning division.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I have one speaker card. Judy Berquist.
Hi, I'm the neighbor that lives inside of
Do you
Apricot
want
Lane.
do we have a pointer for a speaker to use?
Can I use your, how does it work? Do you have a, their property surrounds me on the east, west, and south. I'm in the middle.
Could you
of it.
speak
Sorry.
closer to the mic? Thank you.
Yes, right there. That's my property there. And we run a boarding and a small boarding training horse facility there. We've been there for about 20 years. Our biggest concern, I've been in contact with John and Molly and Becky Linder about these things, and we really didn't have a major problem with them having some events. But listening to you talking now about the entrance into their property, I was under the impression that everything was going to go through Maria Drive. Now, Maria Drive comes off of Grimes Canyon, so that means Stockton and Broadway would never be a factor. But now I'm hearing that the entrance may be at Stockton and Broadway. To get into my property, that is the only entrance and exit at Stockton and Broadway. I come up through their access road into my property. If they're going to have cars coming down Broadway into the event and I need to get out, that possibly could be a problem if there's a large amount of cars trying to get in, because Nora is correct, those turns are very tight to get in and out of the property, and those are small roads. So I'm just wondering about that. As I say, I was told all the entrance and exit would be out of Maria Drive, which if it was, I don't have a problem, because that's quite a ways from my entrance. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the tours, and mainly the tours and some of the events at their barn. I did not know they were going to have any events at their barn. Their barn is right behind my barn. And
When you say right behind, ma'am, how far?
about 100 feet,
Okay.
if less. And usually there's no problem, but they do have their workers sometimes get together, have a little gathering, and they play some games which are quite loud. And there's been a couple incidences when I've been in my barn working with my horses that it has spooked the horses and has put me in danger. So I did talk to John and Molly about that recently, and they said that they would have those workers move to another area to play those games. And that would be fine with me. But that is a concern, that if activities are going too close to where my horses are, or if bus tours, if the route gets changed for some reason. Right now I'm told it's not going to go behind my barn or my house, but if it should get changed, that could potentially be a safety problem for the people that ride at my facility. So those would be some of my concerns, that the route wouldn't be changed, and also the entrance and exit not being blocked for us getting in and out.
I have a question.
Commissioner Armstrong.
How many other residents use the same access and egress that you do?
Only Apricot Lane.
Okay. How many clients do you have boarding horses there coming in?
I have, right now, I probably have 10, but we can have at times more than that.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing for that.
Any other questions?
Oh, I had one other question.
Sure.
They said 60 events a year. Does that include the bus tours 3 times a week, or are the bus tours different? The classes, I'm sorry, the classes.
They're saying 60 temporary outdoor events per year is what I understand.
Uh-huh.
And up to 39 of those could be catered high-end dinners is what I understand also, with
Right.
50 people or
And they
more.
spoke about having classes 3 days a week.
That was
is
during the day, I'm told.
during the day, and that's not part of the 60 events?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, ma'am. Any other speakers? Okay. Mr. Chester, before you leave today, if you would fill out a speaker card, I would appreciate it.
Oh, sure. Can we respond to that?
Surely.
You'll get an opportunity to in a moment. Okay. We have no other speakers. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Discussion?
You're going to give him a rebuttal?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm sorry. Mr. Chester, it's your opportunity to respond. Thank you.
There's two issues were brought up. One was the Maria Drive entrance. I think that's exactly what that road is, as I understand it. There's two entrances to the farm. They split
Could you use the pointer and use the overhead? Thanks.
All right. Judy, how did you do this? All right. Oh, okay. All right, that is the entrance right there. There is a road that travels down here. That is Maria Drive. This is the main entrance to the farm that the Berkwists share with us. It goes up to her property. The concern, as we understood it, was that, and we understand, is that if there were buses and people coming up there and she was trying to get by with horse trailers, there would be a lot of congestion there, or it could be at times. So we agreed that it would be better to have them come in the Maria Drive entrance. That way they're turning off the road and going right in, and really should be minimal impact to her ability to kind of flow in this road right here. So that's where we bring people down here, and then they park in this area right here that looks like a pasture.
Now, you can pick up Maria from Grimes. So where would your sign be saying not an entrance?
For Grimes, the south part of Maria Drive, which is not pictured here, it goes...
Oh, do we have one that... You want to help him? And is that something in the staff report that there's going to be a discrete little sign saying not an entrance so that people don't make that mistake?
I'm sorry, miss, I walked away.
I was addressing it to
Oh.
Becky Linder.
It's not in the CUP right now, but we can add it.
We would also have a person at the gate during any of those types of events, especially when there's a lot of people coming in, the few 300 event requests. We would have people at that gate to make sure that there are no issues. That would be the last thing we would want, naturally. We want to be good neighbors, but we also want the people coming in and out of the road very safe. That's important. I think the Grimes Canyon Road sign, I'm happy to put that sign up. I think we'd have to get some other neighbors to agree to that, or at least figure out where it would go down there. But if it were a major issue, we could have someone stationed down there during larger events to see that no one turns on that road. That's not a terribly big deal either. And if it solves some problems, we'd be happy to do it.
Well, I think, Mr. Chester,
Sure.
I think what you're talking about is putting, with the cooperation of neighbors to your south, putting a sign on and again, I don't remember the name of the road that comes off of Grimes Canyon that you can access Maria from.
That is the road, yes.
That is the road, okay.
Yeah, so...
Okay, so it is Maria all the way down.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that area you would create signage.
Yeah.
To redirect or prohibit me or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think
discourage.
I think it's a good idea. We're actually partners in contributing to the repair of that road on the lower half of it, so we actually have, for the first time, a consolidated list where I could actually reach out to everyone on that road.
Yeah, well...
to be
and
able to
again,
get that
you're
consensus.
more familiar with
yeah.
the road than I am, but absent that, it would potentially create a lot of traffic on that part of Maria that doesn't have to go that way and shouldn't go that way.
Right, and we've spoken with all the neighbors that in that area that have any concerns. They were a majority of our neighbors are to our direct south.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, the one more incident,
Sure.
the barn area, I think there's some confusion because I noticed when they were presenting in the beginning, she pointed to an area that Judy has concerns with, which is right near her horse stables. But I don't believe we have any events planned for that. That's actually the tractor parking sort of and hay barn area. The area that was pictured of the actual picture of a porch is on the front side of that. And I would say that that's probably a good 100 yards, 150 yards away from her barn on the other side. And Judy did speak with me about the noise that came from an egg toss competition with our crew, and we will no longer have those out there because I agree that's dangerous with the horses and stuff. But yeah, it's not our intention to have big events or rallies back in that area, but I can see how Judy thought that was now going to be the location because it was accidentally referred to as an event spot in the initial presentation, which was just a mistake, I think.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Have you thought anything on having a 5-year instead of a 10-year to address some concerns that I have about the length of the CUP?
You want to? Can I just consult with my wife for 1 second?
Certainly.
Could I pick up the ball here just for a second following on that? I would like to know in a 10-year CUP, based on your experiences monitoring compliance, what could I reasonably expect, or how many times could I reasonably expect a review of this CUP?
We attempt to review all CUPs every 3 years, except for the exception being these special event CUPs that are being approved, where we're now proactively going out every year.
Okay, thank you.
I think the request is reasonable, but from our side, I think it is the expense of going through this process, if I'm honest. But I like that there's oversight because we want, there to be at least just oversight as much as having to just defend ourselves on our own that we've done things right. I think it's actually really important, that we're involved in that process. Because it gets confusing for people on the outside when they can't see what's happening inside and they just speculate that we're doing things that we should or shouldn't be doing. So I think that's really more of the issue, is just the financial implication for us. So,
Rather than having it terminate, we could build in a mandatory review after 2 years or something, and planning director discretion, whether it warrants bringing it back.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Maggie.
So if you're going down Broadway and you're going to turn left on Maria, right? Do I have that right?
down Broadway, let's see if I get myself right here. Okay, yeah, Broadway.
And then turn.
And left, this, is what we all call Maria.
Okay.
Yeah.
How easy to see is it to see that is Maria?
Well, there's
Well,
a
sure enough.
sign, there's a giant sign there that says Apricot Lane Farms. There's two signs. They're well marked there.
Just what I wanted to know.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. It does split, yeah, and then we would, for those events, to your point, you said, but it splits, is we would put up an event parking sign, a small sign that would just go in the ground, and we would also have people, I would think 2 people at the front gate to keep traffic moving.
Any other questions, Commissioner? Commissioner
How
Dukas.
how important are these movie nights to you? I've got a big problem with the movie nights. I understand that you'd want on a summer's day, or a wonderful weather day, as much as you can plan, to start a movie, and it needs to be dark. I assume that you're holding these outside,
Yes.
so it needs to be 9 o'clock in order for it to be dark enough to have the movie start. And movies go a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And then you need people out of there. And I've just got a real problem with introducing in this pretty quiet area, people, leaving at 11:30 at night.
Oh, I definitely understand the concern, because that was another issue that when we had requested that number of, a larger number of movie nights, the neighbors met together, and that was the number that they came back to me with. I believe Tom Crocker headed that up, and there was, 20 or more neighbors that met more than once. And then I met with Tom and Patty Waters about that very incident, or that very issue, probably 5 times on the farm, not including the big event we had with everybody come out. But I understand that, and that's why we requested that, that number, much lower number. But to your point, like in the summer, maybe the compromise would be maybe in the summer we only have 1 or 2 of those, but in the off season, when the light gets darker sooner, we could have more of them in the winter. Because it's Southern California, so it's pretty much outdoor weather all the time, and with no rain.
I noticed a lot of fog in those pictures.
I don't know where that came from.
All right.
But yeah, I understand your point.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll close the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me? You have a question, ma'am?
Excuse me, or reopen for the speaker.
This is my sister, who also is the owner
If
of
you
the
would
property.
introduce yourself.
My name is Margot Berquist, and we're at 10680 Broadway Road. And the concern on the turn on Broadway and Stockton, that is a hairpin turn. And the entrance into Maria Drive would block our entrance going in and out of our property. That line of traffic, if there is traffic there on an event with 300 people, not that they're coming all at one time, but you are talking a hairpin turn. It's not, they have to turn directly in. When we pull in, it's a dangerous turn. I go out a little beyond. I start to sneak around Stockton to make sure traffic isn't going to come and hit me. Same again when you're turning off of Walnut Canyon onto Broadway. There's only a little tiny turn lane for one car to turn left onto Broadway Road. We don't have a stop sign. We're supposed to keep turning. But that is going to back traffic up all down Walnut Canyon Road, because it's not it's a very small turn lane. Secondly, as far as the events, I just want to get it clear. Only where the event sites are held, and if the events are held within their property, only people within 300 feet. So nobody will be notified of an event, because nobody is within 300 feet of their property.
Well, that was a question.
It's actually not the property, ma'am. The way it was amended, it was 300 feet from the event.
I mean, of the event, that's what I mean. So nobody's within 300 feet of that event. So
I have the same problem, ma'am.
okay, and then also with the gardening classes and things like that, there's no notification. So with those classes, that's actually, they're asking for 216 events a year. I know that they're separated. I know that they're asking for festivals. They're asking for 60, farm-to-table dinners. I understand all of that. But they all, in addition, are asking for 3 classes a week. So when you add that up, that's 152 classes a year. So that's 216 things going on a year. I mean, that's just simple math. That's all there is to that.
You're right.
So, okay, and then one last thing, as far as the concern in spraying, yes, we have avocados on the west side of our property, and we have somebody taking care of that. They call us the day before they're going to spray. We don't know, and yes, and we're not supposed to do anything in those pastures, go down in that area for a few days with our animals. So that's just another concern there. That's all. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question of the speaker?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Commissioner Wessner. Will we have the speaker come back for a moment?
Could you come back up, please? I have a question. It's all right.
Sorry. And also, would you fill out a speaker card before you leave today?
Sure, I will do that.
Ma'am, how many times a day would you say you access Stockton and Broadway from your property?
I go in and I go out once a day right now. Well, sometimes twice a day. I don't live on the property. I live somewhere else. I'm maintaining somebody else's property. My sister probably goes in and out every day, twice a day. The boarders, I can't tell you, they come and they go. We have 10 different boarders there right now. And yes, we are the only people on that driveway. We're the only people that are impacted by it. But if we did have an emergency, and that is the case with horses, sometimes you have an emergency and we need to haul out to the surgery center in Somas, we need to know that we can get that animal out in a timely manner. I mean, and we're not just talking just regular barnyard horses here.
How many of those in and outs are with horse trailers? Half?
We
100%?
have one person that trailers out a couple of times a week to go trail riding. It's not an everyday event. Most people just ride on the property. They train on the property.
So it's just mostly automobile pickup. It's not horse trailers every hour going in?
No. We are very quiet up there.
Okay.
What we do is extremely quiet.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
He gets to respond.
Sure, come on up, Mr. Chester.
That turn that she's talking, they hold events on their farm, I guess horse shows, or is that what you call them? Yeah, so they have dressage shows, and they have people coming in all the time without incident on that very turn, and nonetheless, they have people coming in those same entrances for their events. They have a giant arena in the center of the farm. So what we see is a modification even of what they're currently doing right now when it comes to that. And on top of that, there are actually horse trailers that are coming in that are longer going across that intersection. We take all that seriously, and it's why we've also modified our approach to having the traffic come in the way that it does, and also make sure that we have people there because it's our responsibility. I don't see how their exiting could be impacted if we have someone there directing that traffic. And most of these events are smaller events. They're not all these larger events, just to be clear. And if it's a cooking class, we're talking about several people. We're not talking about 50 people for.
Cooking, it's not cooking.
Well, not cooking, gardening or something like that. It would be not 50 or 60 people for a show, or 100 people, whatever it would be. Any other? Did I miss anything else?
No.
And the spraying. The spraying is it's at the opposite side, the west side of the property, and our tours aren't even going along that route. When they spray for most of the property, I can't even see the helicopter that's flying doing that spraying. And we've actually another concern that they had was their arena butts up against the top 4 pastures of our property, and there was a lot of concern about us driving on the road along that arena, let alone having tours. So we modified that, and we, on top of that, had a fence put in just to protect any of our livestock from ever, getting up there or bothering the horses. So we went to great lengths to knock some trees down that were older and put in a fence to protect that. But on top of that, we've completely blocked that area of the farm off to any of these public events. We're also putting in 3 speed bumps made of rock that go along that road to slow just our workers down who drive electric vehicles, sometimes in tractors by there. And some slow and quiet signs as well. Those are additional things that we've been doing to try to, appease their requests.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll close the public hearing.
You sure?
Okay, discussion. Let's begin.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Weston.
I've heard the conversations and the testimony today. Again, like I said, I'm familiar with the area. That's why I was asking the questions about the volume of the other uses of Apricot Lane. I understand the concern about the 10-year. However, I do like the idea of having staff bring it back to us inside of a year. On the representations, the staff now are annually checking these permits. The applicant has agreed to additional signage as far as Marine Lane. I'm not that concerned about the movie nights because if it does become an issue, I know Patty Waters, I'll hear about it very quickly. Never sit on a board with Patty Waters. First thing I'm going to warn you. So at this point in time, I'd like to hear what my fellow commissioners have to say before I recommend anything.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner May.
Well, first off, I'd just like to say that you have a really beautiful piece of property up there. Anytime we get into these kinds of things, there's yin and yang. There always is. And you want to try to get rid of enough of the yin that you can do the yang. I like the 10 p.m. Cutoff. I really like 9 p.m., but 10 p.m. will work. The road sign, in fact, there's going to be people there and events where there's, lots of folks coming. And I also like the idea of coming back after there's been a review by the staff to give us a report of what you found. And I think this is doable.
Commissioner Dukas.
Well, I think it's really commendable that the neighbors got together and discussed openly, and it seems to be that, most of the issues were resolved and there was compromises made and choices made. I really appreciate that because that's not always the case. And the reason why it seems so gun shy is because we've had at least two situations where it wasn't that way. So kudos to the community and to the operator to come together. That being said, I appreciate what you said about the movie nights. That the neighbors came up with 5, but my judgment is that's needs to be looked at again once they've occurred and people see how they feel about them. That's why I want the review, not just based on complaints, because we've seen where people do comply with the letter, but it's still bothersome to people. I think that's a problem with our noise ordinance. And the problem with the standards being the same for rural, quiet areas as they are for every place else in unincorporated Ventura County. So the 10 o'clock time, I'm in support of. I would like it to be a 5-year CUP with a 1-year review. I'm open to hearing what other commissioners have to say. The movie night, I'm really leery of. But I'm generally supportive of supporting and promoting agriculture. Ventura County is amazing how we are so close to Los Angeles, and then you come out here and it's like a switch turns on. And I went to your property and there is either a Cooper's hawk or a sharp-shinned hawk on a post. I looked over at your movable chicken thing, and it's free range. This mess of chickens all over the place. It was idyllic. It was beautiful, and hopefully your food is as gorgeous to the taste buds as it is to the eyes. So I'm very supportive, and I envy you. I envy where you live. It's just gorgeous. So those are my concerns.
Commissioner Armstrong.
Well, I think I'm probably the only farmer on this board, and so I come at this from a little different direction. And over the years, being on the Farm Bureau Board and other things, I'm very, very cognizant of inroads into ag and everything that's been done to protect it. So I may be a little overzealous in that regard. Certainly am compared to the people on this board. So when I look at something like this, I looked at it and asked, is this truly compatible with ag, or is this a commercial development clothed in agriculture? And we've had our share of those. I don't have any problem with the ag promo. I don't have problems with catered high-end dinners, especially if you're promoting your own products. And I don't have a problem with farm-themed festivals promoting your brand and your activities. I do, however, have a serious problem with charity events, movie nights, and fundraisers. Because unless those are tied to ag, I can't find them to be compatible with ag personally. I'm concerned that everyone seems to think that the conflicts with agriculture will be resolved by giving someone 300 feet away from an event notice. I don't think it does. And I think any high-density use, tours or otherwise, creates problems for the adjacent farmer. He can't always make up his... He's not always in control when things happen. And as they pointed out to you, we get, I may get a notice, we may have to spray for any number of things, any period of time. Farm advisor, we go to the labs and they come back and says, hit this hard and hit it now. There's not going to be any real time to notify the applicant. And a lot of these pesticides and other things have a lag time where you're told to stay out of the orchard. And these, the tours around are right on the border. That bothers me. I was also bothered by the fact that there may be some event near the neighbor's horse barn, and there shouldn't be. Horses are notoriously skittish, and we would hate to have a problem there. That bothered me. So, I mean, if this thing were to go forward, I'd want a setback from her barn that is reasonable. And you're a reasonable person. I've obviously seen you guys are acting reasonably. You don't want any accidents, and you don't want to be you don't want to take the brunt of any litigation. So at the very least, I think she should have setback requirements so she shouldn't have to worry about that. The overall tenant or the overall program, laudable. Appreciate it. Like Nora, nice situation. Love what you're doing. Don't want to create a problem for your neighbors. Don't want to do anything and to encourage encroachment within ag that's not ag related. Therefore, like I said, I have a problem with charity events, movie nights, and fundraisers. They're not tied to ag. There's nothing that ties any outdoor events to ag. I certainly think that it's appropriate for you to have people enjoy your food and have them to dinner. I think that's a great way of promoting your brand, and I think it's a good thing to have people come out and see your operation in terms of a festival, if it's related to your operation. I'm kind of concerned, and I must admit I'm not familiar with the area on this traffic issue. I mean, if that can be resolved to everyone's benefit, that's fine. I'm not sure that I truly understand the situation as well as Nora and others. That sounds like it could be an issue that may need to be resolved, and I don't even know if you need a modification there coming into the property to alleviate tight turns. I don't know if that's even possible. But I'm not familiar with that. I am concerned with noise. I'm concerned with interference with a neighbor's farm operation, trespass, loss of, I mean, anything high density, urban, is no friend of ag. And so anytime you have hundreds of people in the immediate area, you start to get nervous. So my position is, I'd like to promote this project. I'd like to have it go on for a period of time and be subject to review to see that it's operating just the way everybody intends it to operate, or we think it's going to operate. But I can't support charity events, movie nights, and fundraisers unrelated to the agricultural operation. That's it.
Like I said, pretty well expressed to you my concerns and my apprehensions, and I think staff and Mr. Chester has addressed those to pretty well. I kind of noted from the applicant's presentation, almost the first paragraph, the words spoken were the owner's sacred space. Yeah, it's a beautiful parcel up there, and it is, it's a sacred space that you consider there. And that description applies to probably the majority of the property owners in the area, and I think you know that. And so that's why these issues are here, and that's why these concerns are expressed. It's not because of trying to create opposition or roadblocks to what you're trying to accomplish. I also appreciate what you're doing and commend you for it. I think it has a lot of good in it that'll benefit the community. Traffic is an issue. It's a concern. We focused on traffic, the Grimes Canyon, Walnut Canyon route. There's other traffic that'll come up 23 from 126, I suppose, once they know your event is there or your facility is there and have had the opportunity to get up there to maybe attend an event. So not all the traffic is going to come off Grimes or Walnut Canyon. You'll get some disparity, and they'll come in off the 126 side up onto 23. But I think, based on the representation Mr. Chester's made as it relates to traffic and the road situation, particularly the lower end of Maria at Grimes, and trying to create some signage to prevent that as the primary access. And I think you understand what I'm saying when I say somebody plugs the address into your GPS and they're going to take you the shortest way. And that's where the conflict's going to be. The noise situation, the amplification, I'm glad I heard you say you agreed to a 10 o'clock pulling the wire on the amplification. That's out of respect for your neighbor's privacy as well, obviously. So with that, as far as the CUP, length of CUP, I raised the issue. It's a concern. But I'm comfortable with the comments we got from staff in response to both my questions and Commissioner Westner's questions. I feel that we have the opportunity to review it, make periodic review, and watch it that way. So I'm willing to go ahead and leave it at 10 years on the CUP, subject to review by the director.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Commissioner Westner.
I'd like to make a motion for the proposed staff recommendations with the following modifications. One, to accept the errata document be incorporated for the conditions that was presented. But under condition number 37, to satisfy Mr. Onstott's concerns, instead of the event, that it be 300 feet from the property line so that all the adjacent property owners are notified. And along with that, I know we're doing a little fine tuning, that the Chesters be made aware of when spraying is done so that if they need to, they can alter the tour route to ensure the safety of the children or any other people there. Number two, that there may be a 10 p.m. noise cutoff in the conditions. Number three, Maria Lane will have signage and personnel to prevent unauthorized accesses, as we've discussed. That we keep the 10-year CUP limit, but the staff bring back within 1 year a report on the conditions, and that will help me as far, hopefully my other commissioners, as far as the movie night issue. As far as the stage area number 3, I think the Chesters realize the concern that goes on over there to minimize what activity goes on in that area, if not eliminate. That's one of the things I will be looking at when the review comes back in a year, is if the conflict with the horses and the events at area number 3. So with that, I make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Second.
I have a motion.
Can we discuss it?
And a second. Can we?
Go ahead.
Let's go ahead and discuss it before we take a vote.
My question here is, I appreciate your comment regarding the 300 feet, but I don't know if 300 feet does it either, because I don't have, could we put up the map again, or the aerial? I don't know how many people that would encompass, or whether that would get us where we want to be.
Well, my aerial demonstrates to me that would be all of the adjacent property owners.
That brings everyone in?
It would be anybody 300 feet. She's got a radius map.
Okay. That's fine, ma'am. Then that's good. Let it go. I'm good with that. Okay. I would like, we have one situation that that exists, neighbor-poised situation, I would like a setback from any event from her barn. We're not going to move her barn. And I don't know if is it a major inconvenience to have a setback from her barn for whatever you plan in that immediate area? I think you said that you were talking about whatever's going to happen there would be maybe 100 yards away?
Oh, I mean further, where the actual events, do you want to talk?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
do we or? Oh.
There's two things. There's a native restoration area in the pond. It's one of the largest native restoration areas of its kind in Ventura County, which is the pond location. I don't see events around the pond being
My
loud.
specific concern was a health and safety issue raised by this lady.
No, I'm getting to that, sir.
Okay.
The pond is also like probably 100 yards or so from the barn area.
Okay.
I'm just saying that area is one of the event locations. I don't see them being loud events around the native restoration area.
Okay.
The area that you're talking about with the parking lot area behind the barn, we don't have any proposed events going on there. If it were a tour of people going through to enter the barn, but there's no event or bathrooms or catering or anything like that in that area. The event site is in front of our barn, which is several hundred yards from their barn, and divided by a building. It's actually 2 rows of buildings, trees, and a hill.
Could you agree to a reasonable setback from her barn that we could incorporate?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I
Could you
think
give
as
me a
long as we
yardage?
would be able to just walk people through to get into the barn, it's just that we're not going to have an event like an event there.
Well, what I'm saying is, could you agree to no event within how many yards of the barn? Event. By event, I mean production of people and access and egress, obviously.
Yeah, I just am concerned about if I have my math right on. Yeah, I know. I'm concerned about the number just to make sure I'm being fair to us and being able to do what we need to do, but obviously you don't want an event in the parking lot area.
Can staff work with the applicant and input from the speaker, the previous speaker, Berkowitz?
He's
And
going to access the
yeah.
barn here,
Yes.
her barn.
come up with something?
Well, I just don't
Yes.
want
that's
We could
agreeable?
say maybe limit the events to the east side of the inside the barn and the east side of the barn. That would satisfy getting it out of that parking area.
Could you say an event within 50 yards of her barn?
Yeah, I would think that would be safe.
Well, then I would recommend we amend Mr. Wesner's motion.
I'll think about it.
To include
I'll think about
a 50-yard setback.
Okay.
Which is the only immediate health and safety issue I saw here today.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Weston, would you like to amend your?
I will. Just before I do that, let me discuss on this motion. I want to get back to the traffic issue. Obviously, living in this area for a long time, probably too long. If we remember, we approved the paintball operation off of Walnut Canyon, all right, and we've had no complaints. Everybody thought there would be massive amounts of traffic, on and on and on. The only thing Patty's complained about is an old, ugly metal building. Like I said, it gets monitored pretty quickly. So I'm not that concerned about the frequency of the traffic on the roadways. 23 is designated by Caltrans at service level B, the turning environment. So it's a pretty minimally used, even if we were to get 300 people in a day over a 10-hour period. You know, that's it. The road can handle the traffic, so I'm not that concerned about it. The noise, again, it's more of a rolling environment than what we saw a couple weeks ago with the flat. So the sound attenuation issues, I'm not that concerned, particularly since we're limiting the time and the type of instruments that are being used. I agree with Commissioner Onsod as far as helping the equestrian issue next door, and the applicant seems to be open to it. I don't want to limit it too much as I look at, because I think the irrigating pond is a very critical part of what you do out there, particularly with the sensitivity to the drought situations that we deal with. So if an entity can approach something to how they can recycle water, reuse it, I think that's something that's very educational, very beneficial. So that awareness I wouldn't want, but if it sounds like the applicant wants to worked with this individual, and I understand. I have a concern now with the dressage issues, but that's not before us today, and I can talk to staff later. With that, I will amend my motion to the stage area number 3, that applicant will make all attempts to stay at least 50 yards away from the neighboring barn as far as their events.
You really want to say that, or they will not stage an event, one of these commercial-like events?
I tell you,
They've got to be able to get in and out of their own property.
well, that's what I say. I'm looking at it. That's what I'm talking about. It's over here on the other side of their barn. Their barn's over here. So what we're talking about is this buffer area that you're discussing.
Right.
That's already there. They've got to be able to access that barn.
Right.
For purposes.
Right.
So what you're talking about is this area right in here.
Right.
Okay. All right. 50 yards. Okay. If it becomes burdensome, please come back to staff. Amend my...
No, but one point of clarification. So this thing is seeing a sunset at some point in time for further review at how long?
1 year.
Okay.
1 year.
I can support that.
Right. Because we'll also have the data if the 5 movie nights are an issue. Okay. So I amended with the 50 yards on the stage area 3.
Okay, I haven't amended the original motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Amendment by Commissioner Onstadt, seconded. Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote.
Oh, that's right.
Congratulations. You have your CUP. Thank you for working with staff and the neighbors to make this thing a go. We really appreciate it.
Now, tell Patty she's got to get a permit now for when she holds the Boys and Girls Club events up there at her property. I have been many of those.
Okay. What else do we have here? That's it? Anything from staff?
Sorry. I do not have any reports on board actions or other matters. I don't believe anything's occurred since your last hearing on July 3rd. I do see on your tentative hearing schedule that on August 7th you have an oil and gas program informational training workshop that our staff is going to be providing to you, so that should be very informative.
Yeah.
Will that be covering fricking and fracking and everything else to do with oil and gas?
It should be covering all of that, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the meeting. We're adjourned.